I'm Oren Rosenzweig. I'm the co-founder and the chief product officer of Cobalt. And I think this session will flow well from Tatiana's presentation. Um, Tatiana spoke about many aspects of bank transformation, strategy, processes, people. I agree, it's incredibly complicated. I will focus just on one aspect of it, which I will argue is the bottleneck. And maybe it's not the only bottleneck, but the one I will focus on is visibility, because you cannot execute on what you cannot see. And then I'll kind of quickly show you how we try to solve that. So every bank is running some version of 3 programs in parallel. So one is improving the efficiency of the existing business processes. 2 obviously is introducing AI, and 3 is very broad, which is modernizing legacy infrastructure, decommissioning unsupported software, reducing vendor lock-in, integrating post-M&A. These are all different objectives, but they all hit the same walls. So basically, if you pick any of those goals and you ask your team a simple question, like which systems are going to be touched, you're probably going to get an answer that's operationally useless. I mean, because there is a gap between the diagram on the wall and what is really running in production. Every change requires weeks of manual tracing. It's all a visibility problem. So what do we need to do to unblock execution? Like 3 things need to be true. I mean, 1, the view of the architecture has to be real time, like what the systems are actually doing right now. 2, it has to be generated automatically without all the interviews and the manual work. And 3, it has to be operational, so you can use it to make a decision. So to summarize it, it's a shift from static documentation to a living model of the bank. So how do we do it? I mean, Cobalt reads the artifacts that already exist in the bank's environment, things like logs, code, telemetry. It's just crawling through them to reconstruct the topology and every business process running across it. So let me show you kind of quickly how that looks like. So what you see here is I took some screenshots of our application, and this is basically the bank's architecture on one page. Everything you see here was discovered automatically by Cobalt by scanning the bank systems. On the left, we see the bank's topology map. Each block there is a system component, such as a third-party application, a cloud service, or an in-house developed system. And the components are arranged in layers according to their place in the IT stack, from channels and user experience at the top, all the way down to the core banking system, the data layer, infrastructure layer, internal components on the left, and then third-party services like Stripe or Plate on the right. And then each component is connected by wires to all the other components that it communicates with. So on the right-hand side, we see a list of business processes over there discovered by Cobalt. You have, for example, there cross-border wire transfer, as mentioned earlier today, mortgage origination. These are just like 2 of hundreds or thousands of processes that you will find in your bank. And generating this view would have taken months for an enterprise architecture team, and it would have been stale by the time it would have been done. And we can produce something like this in minutes. But actually, now comes the real magic. I mean, when I click on any business process, like over there when I clicked on corporate wire at the top, a path lights up. I clicked on this one, then a path lights up on the topology map, which can immediately see all the different components that this business process uses. This wire transfer, for example, it uses 20 different components, from the mobile app through the fraud engine to the core banking system. And this visibility alone can reduce the incident resolution time, for example, by an order of magnitude. And it also works the other way too. So if you click on a component, let's say I click on this Kong gateway here, you immediately see a list of all the business processes that use this component and could be affected if it changes. You see a list here of all the business processes that actually use this component. But actually, when an architect wants to make a change, he or she needs even more details. So we can even click further and double-click into a business process. And let's go back to the cross-border wire transfer from before. And you can see a summary here that Cobalt produced at the top in plain English on what this business process does. This was generated automatically. And underneath this summary, you see there a process flow diagram. It's a bit hard to see, but it covers the entire process end-to-end, showing the business logic of each step. But it's not just a discovery tool. It can also help you plan any change based on the understanding of the existing architecture using a chat interface. So for example, here, if you see on the right, I'm opening this chat we called Kobe, which is kind of an agentic architect. And you can ask Kobe, how do I add a fee to this wire transfer process? Over there at the top. And Kobe suggests what steps to add to the process, how to implement it, how to test it across the different systems, and also the regulatory considerations that you need to take into account. So, I mean, an analysis like this would have taken weeks of interviews with multiple teams, which you can kind of do here immediately. But I think there is another point here which I want to refer to, which is something Oren said earlier today. And I completely agree with him, which is like, we started thinking about this a little bit differently. So, when we look at the world where most interactions or most of the users are actually agents, and I'm talking about agents that actually operate inside the premises of the bank. So in the case where you already have an agentic SDLC process or an agentic incident response process, those agents can access all this information, right? All the topology and all the information that Kobe here, for example, is providing. They want to access it in a completely headless way, right? Not using this application. So for this, we actually built an MCP to Cobalt, so you can get all this information through an MCP, all the functionality of Kobe or the mapping itself, right? So if you, let's say, for example, you want to make changes to an existing business process, you want to add some new functionality, your Claude code will need context on how the business process is currently implemented, right? And this part, this is the part that takes the longest in SDLC, right? I mean, the coding itself has become quite fast, but the thing that takes the longest is understanding how the existing business logic is currently implemented across the different systems. And this is the part where Claude Code doesn't have all this context and can use an MCP into Cobalt to actually do this. And this is the use case of AI SDLC. We can talk later about what this means in incident response, for example. And by the way, it can also ask questions like how will this impact, how these changes will impact the different systems, right? What potential issues can come up? So one more thing before I wrap up. Modernization is the use case I've shown you, but it's not the only one that this mapping serves. So incident response is another kind of obvious use case. Industry data shows that 60 to 80% of the mean time to resolution is the investigation, right? Not the fix. The map you just saw kind of becomes the brain for the investigation. That the triage time can drop by an order of magnitude if you have a map like this when you go to do root cause analysis, for example. And there's also a regulatory aspect to this. So as you know, DORA that came into effect January of 2025, Article 8.4 that you see here, it requires the bank to identify all information and ICT assets, map the critical ones, and map the configuration and interdependencies between them, which is pretty much almost the word for word the output spec of Cobalt that we produce here. There's another article there, Article 19, that also talks about kind of the time that you need to kind of meet to initial notification, intermediation, etc. So, which is another regulatory aspect to incident response. Okay, just to recap, reason bank transformation, at least the reason I've focused on today, is slower than it should be, is visibility. You can't execute on what you cannot see. So, if you're interested in something like this, if you're a CIO, CTO, architect with a modernization program that you want to start or accelerate, happy to talk to you. Thank you. Yeah, please.
We always face a problem that what we have on documentation is not on production. So how is this tool different than yet another documentation which is not on production? So is it discovery automatic, or do we need some humans to enter all these details one more time?
Yeah, I mean, the presentation is off, but I mean, there was a slide there that talks about basically it's a live documentation that is always one-to-one aligned with what is in production. So we're using live artifacts from CMDB systems, from APM systems like Dynatrace, the actual logs. We don't use the documentation. We can actually use your documentation to show you where there are gaps between your documentation and what is really in production. That's another use case where, like, just to provide the updated documentation for onboarding or for regulatory reasons, or to just highlight where the gaps are in the existing documentation. So this is contrary to like different tools. Okay, so it's live. It's completely live and up to date and aligned with what's actually in production. Yes, please.
A follow-up question to that. So once you've done the mapping and you have the old documentation, you have identified the gaps and you have the live documentation, what's your recommendation? How do you maintain it then? Do you just stick to the live documentation so it sniffs around in real time, or do you store it somewhere?
Yeah, so it's we recommend it depends on the use case, right? I mean, it depends what you want to do. I mean, if you're going to go for a modernization project, you're probably just going to run this sweep once, map around the specific process you're going to modernize.
Let's assume we modernize, but then want to maintain it for the next 5 years.
Then you would want to basically connect to whatever where the data is, where the logs are, where the telemetries are, and just keep it up to date this way. So run the sweep, depending on the cadence that you actually need to look at it. Yeah. Maybe not in real time, maybe once a day, maybe once a week, but run the sweep every time you need to have this updated documentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
Thanks for the presentation. One question I have is, it seems very much focused on the IT and data side, right? So if we're looking at it from a business perspective where you have colleagues involved performing steps in the process, those things are not included in the overview, right? Or do you somehow find a way to introduce that?
Right, so our main users are in the CIO organization, let's call it, right? So it's usually the system architecture, enterprise architecture teams, or on the operations sides in some cases where it's more like service mapping for incident response use cases. Less on the pure business side, although there is kind of a communication there where like there are some of the screens that are more like in business language. I mean, like the top part of the screen where I showed, okay, here is a completely business language description of this business process, and then if you double click, there are like more specific technical aspects to it.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Can you imagine seeing your whole bank on one page? And thank you so much.